For Probation Services Week, we sat down with Probation Chief Marlon Yarber of Sacramento County to first hear about his professional journey and then to discuss how the work of probation has evolved, yet the mission has stayed the same, effectuating change to improve our communities. Hope you enjoy. Thank you for joining us, Chief Yarber. So, Chief Yarber from Sacramento, you didn't have to come very far for the visit today, but really still appreciate you taking the time out of your day to talk with us, and really excited to jump in on just talking about our favorite topic, probation, the people who work for us, celebrating Probation Services Week, all of the above. So
agreed.
So I do want to just jump right in because I think we're going to have a lot to talk about, and so let's just kick it right off with a really easy question. Share with us the background. How did you become a probation officer?
Yeah, easy, but often complicated,
Yes.
just like, the lives of those we touch. I did not set out to become a probation officer, certainly not to become chief either. Kind of fell into the profession, as many of my colleagues, I think, have expressed they've done themselves. I think back to when I was a young person trying to figure out what it is I wanted to do, not unlike, the times now with people sort of questioning, their own identity, cultural identity, some of the, social justice related issues, nowhere near the levels that we see now. But much of that, I think in my formative years as well. And this was probably the last thing you would have got me to say I wanted to do or become, working in criminal justice. As I've shared sometimes with other groups and other settings, my family, there are as many of us on this side of the bars as there are on this side with the badge. And, I remember, again, as a young person having a lot to say about the system, whether it be disparities or just the way it worked. And some of my older family members on that side of the badge would, sort of challenge me. It's like, well, you seem somewhat smart, and perhaps you could use that to, help, affect the change that you think, should be brought about. And, nothing like a good challenge. And so that really led to my interest in the work and kind of the foray into probation and many of the reform efforts that I've touched, along the way. I started my career, actually I almost misspoke. I started in 94 in Stanislaus County at the probation department. But prior to that, actually got a job right out of school running a mentoring program for at-risk youth, and had applied there and had also applied at probation in Modesto at the same time. And the economy had just started to turn down. I think Stanislaus had a hiring freeze. And so I took that other job, and, they called a little while later and were like, hey, can we call you in 6 months, as the story goes? And I had written down on the calendar, 6 months to that day. And lo and behold, the phone rang, literally 6 months to that day. And it was them. And that led to my entree into probation. And really haven't looked back, though my career has been more of this circuitous route, if you will, as I did not stay in probation for the duration. I was with Stanislaus just under 5 years. Loved it, the old days, as they say. I'm from the bad old days, I'll just call it what it is. You show up, very little training, it's here are your files, and, start making phone calls is, I think, kind of my first day at work. And we've learned so much more about our profession and our business since then. It's really kind of shocking that that's where we were, but, you have to start somewhere. So I worked there, as I mentioned, 4 or 5 years, then went to work for the state. So at the time, the Office of Criminal Justice Planning was hiring, I think, criminal justice specialists, I think might have been the classification. And, it paid more. It paid a whole lot more. It's funny. I tell the story also to like our new hires who just do incredibly well with compensation. I started, I think, in that mentoring program making like $12.12 an hour. And I remember vividly when the then Chief Deputy Jack Copeland called me from Stanislaus, and I just said, "Hey, my price is higher now." And so he offered me $12.36, and that's what got me to take the job ultimately. But so fast forwarding, I went to work for the Office of Criminal Justice Planning, and it was paying considerably more. And I always felt like I had the ability to affect change, implement kind of what I described in the way of reforms on a broader scale, thinking sort of statewide, and left probation to take that job, and had a chance to do some interesting things, but all the while sort of keeping my connectivity with probation. So I maintained my professional memberships, things like CPPCA, California Probation Parole Correctional Association, and from there was exposed to and met the then executive director of the Board of Corrections, Tom McConnell, who realized, I was volunteering some time. I think one day it was a day off, and I was helping the office establish a sublease for the space to generate revenue. And from that literally led to a phone call from Tom's deputy director saying, "Hey, Tom has met you, and we think you'd be a great addition." And I'm like, I think I talked to that guy for 10 minutes, and from that came a job opportunity at the Board of Corrections to do some really interesting things as it relates to probation specifically, working on demonstration grants first, then on mentally ill offender crime reduction grants, and that then transitioned into the Juvenile Justice Crime Prevention Act, or Crime Prevention Act 2000, as a lot of folks know it, and but again, kind of kept this yearning, if you will, for probation work, because you get a little far afield from where the rubber meets the road, and really having the satisfaction of seeing change. And so I always said to myself, if the opportunity came about and I wouldn't lose too much compensation, but also at that time not have to uproot my family or relocate, that I would consider a job back in probation. So in 2011 came an opportunity to work in Yolo County as the then assistant chief, and literally just a year later being named interim chief, which certainly was not ready for. Now looking at it in retrospect, not ready at all, but took that on, and knew that I would not ultimately get that job. Just the dynamics, my own personal challenges at the time with personal losses. Knew that timing wasn't right, and so fast forwarding, Sacramento County got a new chief probation officer, and realizing he and I had colleagues, friends in common, and they said, "Well, you live in Sacramento, you should think about Sacramento County. You guys might make a really, really good team." And will only say, I thought being assistant chief in Sacramento was the highlight of my career. It's only been superseded or surpassed by obviously being named chief just about 2 years ago now. And so getting back to where the rubber meets the road, really getting, your hands dirty, as I say, when I reference that sort of original motivation with my family members kind of, urging me on, there's nothing like rolling up your sleeves and, getting your hands dirty. It's easy to complain or be a critic about something. It's a whole lot harder and much more noble and meaningful for you to sort of immerse yourself into it yourself. And, I'd like to think I've done some of that in my career.
I love listening to your story, Chief. Thank you for sharing it. I mean, in part because I feel like all of your stops in some ways are kind of very similar to what I had been watching as I was, kind of in and around policy development, and I can hear in your voice the thing that I think is so great about the profession of probation is the ability to affect change, and in so many different ways, so whether it is the demonstration projects at the BOC trying to really get off the ground at the time, so groundbreaking under the JJCPA, the juvenile programs, which are now just the foundation of really what we do, and everything that has kind of flowed from there, and how it probably was a great fit for you because of where you started at the mentoring and with at-risk youth. And so would you say your heart has kind of been developed through the juvenile side of things?
Oh, absolutely. I think so many of our staff, certainly my peers, many of us get into this profession for that reason. A chance to work with youth who we know, have maybe made mistakes, but are going to come through it, and a chance to support them is, through that transition or that transformation is truly rewarding. So yeah, it's certainly been shaped by that motivation, but also the opportunities to connect kids to better services and supports.
You also mentioned in your introduction a little bit about the evolution, of probation and what we've seen, which is also, I think, a really exciting thing. You lay out a path that, your specifics are specific to you, but not all that different than a lot of, I know, chiefs and others who have come to the profession, right? You're drawn to wanting to see change. You get there and maybe it's kind of like there wasn't that much training to start with, and, you're just kind of using the best instincts, and, now you look at today, things are a lot different. What are some of the big differences that kind of stand out to you from when you started to as you're welcoming a new class of probation officers into Sacramento County, how the expectations, what the role, the tools available to us?
Sure. It's changed considerably. I just swore in a group, I think Friday before last, so it's fresh in my mind. Our professions, I think, shape-shifted numerous times over the decades now that I've been involved. Seemingly this sort of endless ability to be agile in the moment. I can remember vividly, I sort of talk about my first days on the job. I can remember vividly just having a clipboard, taking chronos, notes by hand, in handwriting, and placing that into the file, making cold calls without really much training in MI or anything that might, help my abilities to engage. And now it's night and day in terms of what we were able to teach our staff. Speaking specifically about, our department, Sacramento, having trained everyone on, adolescent brain development and how to become much more trauma involved and trauma responsive. We just had a class last week on, I think it was the secrets of effective change with clientele, and, explaining that, it's very difficult to break a habit and almost as difficult to start a new habit. And, when you apply that to our population, we get a better sense of why, failure is something that we have to sometimes embrace and realize like it's part of a process to achieving that change that we all hope to see. In the early days, it was, really we know best, and just kind of the early stages of understanding collaboration and working with other entities. And now it's, you fast forward and there have been all sorts of initiatives, programs, changes in law, and that change is really embodied by things like, public safety realignment with establishment of the CCP, the Community Corrections Partnership. When you think about our juvenile role and some of those grant programs that we were speaking of, the establishment of I think it was, the multi-agency juvenile justice coordinating council, these
Yes.
long acronyms, but really about engagement, partnership, relationships at the highest levels to ensure that collaboration continued and really was actualized at the lowest levels where we know, it's so important to be effective with our efforts. Now we're, in this realm where we have so much more data, so much more in the way of tools that help us with regards to identifying what our individual clients' needs, better assessment tools, better treatment modalities, well-researched sort of, gold standard with regards to those efforts that really help pinpoint how to affect change. And for it, I think our outcomes are much more improved.
Even though there has been a pretty significant evolution, as you were just noting, do you think the mission of probation has changed in that time frame?
The mission has not. I think the methods, the tools certainly have improved, but I think the mission's always been about change. We do that. We really work at trying to balance, accountability and opportunity, as we say, and that has not changed. That mission has still has remained. It stood the test of time. But how we get there, I think, has. And I think as we learn more about our own abilities, we learn more about human behavior, more specifically about how adolescents develop. That's informed our ability to address their individual needs. When we look at so many of our cases and you start to peel back the layers and understand maybe, why someone has now, committed a crime and come to the attention of the court, it's much better directed to get at those sort of reasons and those causative factors than just paying attention to the behavior itself. It's often not the thing.
Right. And that's one of the things, as you were talking, it did strike me as, well, if you look at it, the mission itself hasn't changed, the effectuating change, the support of somebody going through that journey of change, while at the same time, with the goal of, making sure that the community is safe as a part of that. The tools maybe have changed and improved, and I wonder if that's in part why it also seems like the big change since probably when you started to what we're looking at now is the mission is being applied in a lot of other applications that now kind of probation is trying to help assist with in a variety of ways. So how has that been, and especially as presiding over that in the leadership position?
Sure.
How do you meet those challenges in the different areas?
Right. So it's funny, when I'm traveling, I think as some of the chiefs will share, like people ask, well, what do you do? And, I never tell them I'm a chief. I just say, I'm a probation officer. If it gets to that point, I say, I work for the county first. And then they're like, oh, let's see, what county department? See what they know. Then, you share that you're a probation. I was like, oh, that must be tough working with that clientele. And that just, you guys don't get paid enough to do what you do. And thank you for what you do. And people really have no understanding, and so it's like when I share with my extended family members, like, well, what's your day like? Well, I'm working on recruitment or, a budget or reading some research. Oh, we have this lease agreement we're trying to negotiate. Like very little to do with what probation officers actually do at this stage. But you're absolutely right. The work has evolved. I remember sort of back to those early days, again, it just sort of the, let's find out the status of each case, document each case, provide them something, give them a class, or remind them to go to school. Don't do the bad thing that brought you, again,
That's
to the
right.
court's attention. That was really kind of all we did. And now, fast forwarding, we, started to adopt more of this law enforcement identity, really pursuing more of the enforcement mindset, leading to more arrests, which are important, but are not everything. And so we see now, again, this sort of evolution, like not losing sight of that ability because it's an important piece of our mission. But now, as I mentioned, sort of peeling back the onion, understanding trauma, understanding the brain science, understanding social determinants of health, and looking at conditions in the community. And sometimes it's a meal that might change someone's trajectory, or its connection to job training. And so as probation officers, we're pressed because I always say, like, but we're just probation officers. But, meanwhile, we have to learn what are the mental health DSM-4 diagnoses. We have to be able to navigate that. Right. The medications that come along with that diagnosis. How do you connect someone to community college? Well, I'm just a probation officer, but we are yet then tasked with that responsibility as well. And can you connect this person to a job? And it's like, well, I can maybe tell you who's hiring. And so evolving and fast forwarding, it's building vocational training and programs within our operations, which I think is what many of the probation probation departments statewide have accomplished. That just speaks to our ability to be agile.
Yeah, agile, adapt, all the things that really are important for a successful probation officer and a probation department for sure. And it seems like, again, going back to affecting change is at the heart of the mission. And what we've learned there are tools now to help us affect that change. And some of that is about providing the opportunities. That's probably a lot of what came through with a lot of the most recent reforms. But you also mentioned opportunity balanced against accountability. So what does accountability mean in the context of probation and affecting change?
Sure. It's an important part of our toolkit. I can only say, for myself, it's important for many individuals knowing that there is, a piece that you're accountable to. Maybe it's accountable to yourself or to others. Can really be motivating. We often will talk with our clientele, particularly like those who've graduated programs, both adults and juveniles, and oftentimes they'll cite the probation officer as the person or the thing that helped propel them to making that lasting change. And we'll often comment, and you held me accountable when I had that misstep, but you also didn't lose sight of, I needed help up. And, those things are really important because you never really know what it is that will help someone get through that period of transformation. So many of our clients will point to an individual. When I think back to some of those early demonstration grants that I referenced, there were sort of differences in regards to outcomes, just given each jurisdiction and what they were implementing. But the common thread that I have always taken away, it was the caring adult or the caring or supportive individual. Often, many times that's the probation officer. It's really that is what has affected change. And so for our staff, it's so much about engagement, relationship building, again, recognizing and understanding that people, will make mistakes as they figure it out, as we say. And that's also the message, for our brand new staff. It's that, we not only expect that, they understand that about the clientele, but that they also understand that about themselves. Like we expect them to, push the envelope and try new things and, fully engage in training. And, it's okay if you fail. The idea is that you get back up. And that's the same principle we apply to our target population.
No, that's an important point, right? And you referenced it now a couple of times in your comments that failure is going to be a part of the process of change.
Correct.
Right? And so, how do you deal with that failure in a case with a probationer? Sure.
So it's about applying the appropriate level of response to that failure, recognizing, is this, a relapse? Is it redirecting and sending someone back through, let's say, a treatment program, drug treatment, which is often the case. Sometimes that can be the thing that really gets someone attention, with the idea that, if you're not doing this, there are, graduated responses, if you will, that might help establish that motivation. But it's really just about sort of not losing sight, being very responsive to the nature of the violation, if you will, or the misstep, and not being too heavy-handed, but just being appropriate, if you will.
Right. Making sure people understand, that they need to remain accountable in order to really effectuate change, but that failure doesn't have to mean the worst possible, outcome of that,
right.
A violation necessarily. So those balances require a pretty good hand from a probation officer to kind of discern when is the right time to be looking at the various different options available to them. So we ask our probation officers to do a lot, to be a master of a lot of trades here, it seems like. Is that fair to say?
Very fair. Again, I reference, that officers today have to know something about every other partner in the system. And typically in the court setting, we are the subject matter expert for those who are not part of the court process. So we're answering questions about treatment, answering questions about mental health, answering questions about status with school or vocation. And, has the person, missed any appointments or, completed the treatment modality? That's often us providing and sharing that information and speaking with, enough knowledge that the court entrusts us as part of the decision-making process.
Dealing with different groups and the need for collaboration. I mean, it's almost like a buzzword, a throwaway buzzword for a lot of people, but it seems as though probation, as a profession, but even individually, that officer has to collaborate, has to connect with a variety of different people because they're not the one necessarily, delivering mental health services, for example, or maybe not, the specific person teaching someone how to become a welder or how to, get enrolled in college if that's what is needed. So why? Well, one, would you say collaboration is a key important role for a probation officer? And two, why do you think that they're good at it? Because it does seem like we hear a lot about that.
Yeah, why we're good at it, I'm not really sure. Other than it's part of it is survival, just given the nature of our business and how complex human beings are and their challenges. I think if we really want to be the best at that job and recognizing, again, failure is part of the equation, it necessitates that we've got to have some working knowledge of all of those aspects. As to the importance of collaboration, it starts really at the highest levels. I referenced, some of what's identified in statute in the way of, the bodies that are important at the executive level. And I can vividly remember coming into the department, Sacramento County Probation Department, in 2013 as assistant chief, and one of my first meetings, I believe, was on ACA, the Affordable Care Act. And so, not only am I, learning probation, learning a new boss, learning a new jurisdiction and county, and all of the staff, but I'm engaged with partners that I, hadn't really contemplated a ton at the time.
Sure.
And so we're working with public health, trying to figure out how to embed nurses and eligibility specialists and, mental health clinicians into our operation, something, that we've done and have found very rewarding and really conducive to our effectiveness. But, that's sort of the degree in which collaboration is key. It has to be both supported by leadership, but also effectuated by the staff who are, again, connecting our clients to the supports. We've been very fortunate here in Sacramento County. We work very well together across all of the various system partners, if you will. And embedding staff in our operations has helped us. We, in turn, have embedded officers in other initiatives as well. Years ago, it was just about, we might assign a probation officer to this task force, and though we still do those things, again, very important that we not lose sight of that. Now it's, we might actually embed the officer so that the other law enforcement agencies can see and feel how we do our work.
Right.
Embedding officers in things like, locally our Black Child Legacy Campaign program so that the other partners can see how probation works. We think there are so many lessons to be taken from both our approach, but also the tools that we bring, understanding that it's, not just a lock them up attitude or approach. It's about meeting clients where they are and being able to support them and, again, provide that balance.
And that's important not just for the individual that you're dealing with, but also for, kind of returning somebody to the community that can then also benefit from that. And then just the public safety that comes along with having that in place. I think that's the thing that, for me at least, is always so rewarding in working with probation and on the policies that probation touches, is that you just don't really know exactly where you will end up kind of making that difference, but it does seem like making a difference is at the core of the mission as well. But it's not an easy job, right? And it's not an
True.
easy path. And so people who you mentioned, part of your day might be about recruitment and trying to talk folks into finding a rewarding life within the probation department. And so, we're here celebrating Probation Services Week and the people that work for you and carry out this mission. If you could take some of the things that, as you're thinking about recruitment, how would you talk to somebody who's maybe that person who's trying to decide, do I take that job in Stanislaus or stay, with the at-risk mentoring that you're doing? How do you talk somebody into coming into the profession?
Yeah, that's a great question. I sometimes find myself recruiting people who, as you say, are sometimes either on the fence or I will also flip the conversation on those folks who are often critics of what we do. And we'll really challenge them in a sense the same way that I was challenged. And it's, if you really want to give back, it's not enough just to complain about something. Mm-hmm. Like, come do something about it. Like, we share this community. Like, all of our clientele, they're all coming home to a community that you and I share with them. And so to really support both public safety, but also those individuals, why don't you immerse yourself in the work that we do and help bridge that gap rather than just, again, sort of being the person that complains.
Right. A lot easier to throw rocks than to build the house.
Agreed.
But that's, you have a unique perspective because you might have been someone who wasn't so sure about the system itself. And so kind of coming into it. And would you say at this point now, looking back in your career, that you are happy about the choices that you made and that you feel like you're accomplishing the things that you wanted to see your life accomplished by working within probation?
I think so. I'm not done yet. That's the only hesitancy.
That's for sure. There's still a lot more to do.
There's so
right?
much to do. Again, the highlight of my career for certain at this point, and just thinking through both the ideas that I have that I'm working on with my team, really, at this very moment, things that I'm hopeful for as we enter the county's budget cycle here. I'll be hearings, I think literally next week, looking forward to building out more comprehensive programming for our youth in custody. Obviously, DJJ realignment, Division of Juvenile Justice realignment being such an important task for all of us. And as I say, recognizing that all of those kids are coming home, it's important that we connect them to, all of the tools, all of the options and services that will support, not just reentry, because I think that's kind of overstating it. Mm-hmm. It's really more integration back into the community. And so with that, comes again, whether it be higher education for them, as I will message to many of our youth, education is a game changer. So, it's on us to connect you to that opportunity, but you have to yourself take advantage of it. Or, maybe it's a career technical education pathway or just a vocational pathway. And so trying to ensure those things are provided to kids, really, really important, but also rewarding when you see it start to take shape. Similarly with, many of our adults, if you can change an adult's engagement, recognizing that, it may not start out positive. There may be questions at the onset, but if you can be persistent with services to the point where they maybe change perspectives about who we are and what we do, and again, take full advantage of the opportunities we provide, it can be a game changer, change their trajectory in life, not just for them, but also, for their children, for anyone in their household, changes the way their community thinks about them, changes their own perspective, again, as it relates to the system. So lots of things on the horizon for us. We've never had I think, fully operational mental health unit in probation. Mm-hmm. So I'm excited about the prospect of standing something up that is a much more robust response to what I think is a growing need here in Sacramento, and our ability to support the court more in that mission, I think will go a long way towards our public safety goals. Additionally, the mobile service units, we're a recipient of some grant funds in that regard, and are excited about what it might mean for the county here. Not just to, go back to the point, but again, pushing the envelope with regards to what probation officers do, and recognizing, our own sort of political acumen, if you will, of, what are the major issues and areas of concern, and where do we fit in this, if at all? And, some of our clients obviously dealing with homelessness and being unhoused, and perhaps our ability to connect them to those services can prevent someone perhaps from coming into custody and taking up a jail bed, as I say, for those that we're afraid of, not necessarily those that we're just mad at for the moment.
That's a great way to put it. I think about, there's always challenges ahead. There's always things that you wonder, are we going to, hit some bumps in the road going forward with the mission? Anything that kind of keeps you up at night?
Oh, there's lots.
I know. That's probably not fair to ask a chief, because I know that there's a lot that keeps you up at night. But globally,
there's
maybe.
Lots. Just speaking on today's issue,
Sure.
Worried about contraband coming into the facility, and
Right.
Not to go too far down that road, but effectuating an arrest over the weekend with someone attempting to do so. I worry about the officers who are, part of those teams that I referenced and embedded with other agencies, and wanting them not to lose sight of who we are. Our identity, I think, is so key, and wanting them to obviously be strong, but also exercise their own leadership with regards to that messaging and our mission, if you will. Many other challenges, just given, so much attention of late on probation, and curious where the legislature will try to take things, as we're often caught in the crosshairs with many of the reform efforts. Not that we can't figure it out, but right now, I think the thing that keeps me up is recognizing the implementation fatigue within my own team, and just bracing for whatever might be next on the horizon. And, are we able to meet yet another, monumental landmark change with regards to the system?
Yeah, no, I mean, those are all things that I think, many of your colleagues share in some of those challenges that keep them up at night, and know they will need to have some answers for, So what gives you the most hope for the future for probation?
The thing that I believe generates the most hope in my mind is that we're very clear about who we are. I think about examples sometimes, like at our board of supervisors or another, real public settings. It's great when someone else talks about your work and says, oh, they're, probation, they're fantastic. They're like social workers with guns. And I kind of cringe at those comments. Or, when someone says like, oh, your juvenile hall could become an STRTP. It is so well run. When I hear those things, it's kind of like, I always say we just wear one hat, and that hat says probation. That's what we do. That's who we are. That's the thing that gives me the most hope, is the fact that, we fully embrace our identity and realize, we are essentially the Swiss Army knife in the system. There isn't anything we can't figure out. And because of it, whether the challenges be yet another segment of the justice-involved population that comes our way, or yet the latest, reform that we get tasked with, very much confident that there isn't anything we can't figure out. And I think that comes back to just being very clear about our identity and our role.
Absolutely. And what a great thing to think about as we celebrate, our
Of
profession and the
course.
people who occupy it and do so with such honor and innovation and, the ability to really affect change in their communities is it's pretty rewarding. I know there are times where there's a lot on the plate and shoulders, but I don't think I've seen a challenge in my time working with probation that they haven't been able to meet, and that's a
Agreed.
blessing and a curse, I suppose, but one that I much prefer us to be working under than the opposite of that. So that is fantastic. I'm curious if there was anything when you think back about just celebrating the week and just kind of reflecting on our mission and where we are. If there's anything that I haven't asked you today that you wanted to kind of share with us.
Oh,
Because I'm sure there's plenty of things that I haven't asked, but we do have limited time, and so I
correct.
certainly tried to hit a few top.
Correct. Change is hard. I kind of, I sat through that class that I referenced, the secrets to affecting change, and or becoming secrets to becoming effective change agents, I think is the title. I sat through, I think, 3/4 of that class, about 3 hours, and it just reminded that change is very difficult. Even the best of us, perhaps, who are well adjusted, we struggle with bad habits. We struggle to get off the couch and start that exercise regime that's been looming now since the New Year's resolution. Perhaps, just saying.
Talking for a friend.
Just talking for a friend, right? And so when you remember that, and then again you understand what is going on in so many of our communities, you have a little bit more understanding as it relates to the monumental effort. Again, being a little more considerate of failure, but also understanding that, were it not for me, were it not for the officer, this person might not ever be connected to the opportunity to even, consider that change. There's so many stories, amongst our clientele. I was just doing an interview with the Sacramento News and Review and talked about a couple folks, a couple cases that I'm familiar with. And there's so many of those, whether it's our staff who are sometimes the mentor or the key to that change, or the person that maybe, reminded them about accountability being part of the mission and an option, certainly. But there's so many stories where people have turned it around. I think about the young lady who I think maybe now 17, maybe now 18 years old, who, at 14 was, addicted to heroin and methamphetamines, and, experienced a period of, sex trafficking, and really being off the grid and unaccounted for, and, losing touch with family and friends, but comes to the attention of law enforcement, gets arrested. And, you never truly understand, how that event can change someone, but that arrest can sometimes lead to, someone doing a complete 180. And, I think about this one particular case I have in mind, and, the young lady, subsequently, I think, became pregnant, obviously at a very young age, and placed on probation, and, we're able to connect her with housing that provided supports, connect her with, drug treatment that got her clean and sober, prior to the child being born, which is, fantastic. And when you talk to her today, she says it's probation that, helped her through that. And it's like, without us, like, okay, where would she be? But also, where would this new child be? And so when I talk about sort of the ability to impact change, you can truly see it on a generational level when you think about those examples. And there's so many more that, are indicative of the same. Just, you never really, quite appreciate how long lasting our impact will be.
Well, and often there's so many people who are in need of the services, and, probation officers will go through and work those caseloads, make those changes. And, much like teachers, sometimes you don't even know in years down the line what something, you could have done that
Correct.
did change the trajectory or make a lasting impression. And it seems like that's one of the great things about the work. And, also kind of the humbleness of the people who do occupy the profession in a lot of ways. So I appreciate that we've had some time to illuminate some of that. And I knew you would do a great job in doing
my pleasure.
that. So we do like to ask folks, if you weren't doing this, what would you see yourself doing? Not that I'm trying to drive anybody out of the profession. We want it the opposite, but just to get to know you.
Yeah, this is, certainly one of those things in your downtime you think about, what could I be doing? So, some folks know I'm a bit of an amateur chef. I'll just say barbecue aficionado is probably more accurate.
Well, I don't know how we got from amateur chef to barbecue aficionado.
I am all about the research, the science around smoky meats, as I say. It is a thing of mine. I've shared with some other chiefs and turned them on to some websites for more information if they'd like it, and received some nice report backs, which is very satisfying. But you might think like, maybe you'd be, a chef or a cook. And, my wife says I'm much too slow in the kitchen to actually do that. Like I'm very methodical, and I'm from the low and slow school of barbecue, if you will. So good things take time. And so, no, it would not be that. I often think, it would be sports journalism would be my thing. I'm a huge sports fan, everything. I watch it all. Like, ESPN 8 is sometimes on in my household. And,
Ocho.
Ocho. Correct. And so, if it's the high dive belly flop competition, or, it's the NBA playoffs, which is, got my full attention right now, I think I'd be writing about those things and, watching the games, of course.
Well, I knew that about the sports, and definitely some ways that we connect. What I didn't know was about the aficionado and the barbecue, and I wish I had, because my oven went out a day before Christmas Eve this year, and I was supposed to be making prime rib, so I had to do it on the barbecue, never having done anything like that before. And while I am not an aficionado, it turned out fantastic, and it was just dumb luck.
You should have called
But now
me.
I know who to call when that happens next time.
Absolutely. So, those of us in the barbecue world, I think there's a saying like, don't fool yourself. It's really just an outdoor oven.
Yeah. That's a great point. Yeah. Well, see, there is all sorts of new and fun things that we learned today, and I really appreciate, again, your time, and thank you for sharing your thoughts, most importantly, not just on smoky meats, but also on really the low and slow that we need to apply to the work of probation.
Of course.
And
yes,
I know
very apropos.
Others will appreciate it as well.
No, thank you for having me. Lots of fun.